In 2010, researchers at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland gave professional traders a financial simulation. They compared their performance against a control group of convicted psychopaths. The traders were more reckless, more focused on self-interest at others' expense, and more willing to engage in destructive zero-sum behavior. Even when cooperation would have produced better outcomes for everyone, including themselves, than the clinical psychopaths. The study's conclusion was not that all traders are psychopaths. It was that certain professional environments select for and reward the same cognitive and behavioral patterns that define psychopathy as a clinical disorder. The three personalities that emerge at the top of hierarchical systems are not accidents of individual pathology. They are the outputs of selection environments that preferentially advance specific traits. Understanding those traits is not academic. It is operational. If you have worked in any sufficiently competitive environment, corporate, political, academic, creative, you have encountered these traits. You may have believed you were dealing with a particularly difficult individual. What you were actually encountering was a personality architecture, optimist for a specific kind of environmental pressure. The person was not malfunctioning. In that environment, they were running perfectly. In the next 18 minutes, I am going to decode the Dark Triad, the three-component personality model, first formalized by Paulhus and Williams at UBC in 2002. I'm going to show you the distinction between grandiose and vulnerable narcissism that most people miss. I'm going to decode subclinical psychopathy, the version that does not appear in criminal populations, but does appear in boardrooms, and what it looks like in operational terms. And I am going to show you what the research on Dark Triad traits in leadership positions tells us about why certain environments systematically elevate these personalities, and what that means for the structures you operate inside. Delroy Paulhus and Kevin Williams published the foundational Dark Triad paper in the Journal of Research in Personality in 2002. It has been cited over 5,000 times and replicated across cultures including North America, Europe, East Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. The three-trait cluster has been connected to occupational outcomes, relationship patterns, political behavior, and organizational dynamics. Across a substantial body of peer-reviewed research, let's decode the architecture. Narcissistic personality disorder, as defined in the DSM-5, is characterized by a grandiose sense of self-importance, a pervasive pattern of seeking admiration, and a significant lack of empathy. But the clinical research has increasingly distinguished between two phenotypic expressions that require separate treatment. Grandiose narcissism is the externally familiar version. The person who occupies space loudly, claims exceptional status, and responds to perceived slights with disproportionate aggression or contempt. This is the narcissism most people recognize, the CEO who surrounds themselves with mirrors, literal and metaphorical. Research by Twench Foster and colleagues has documented a significant increase in this trait in Western populations since the 1980s, particularly in the United States. Its presence in leadership environments tends to produce short-term performance gains. The grandiose narcissist is often genuinely skilled at initial impression formation, vision articulation, and confidence signaling, followed by longer-term organizational damage through the suppression of critical feedback, the selection of subordinates based on personal loyalty rather than competence, and the destruction of collaborative environments. Vulnerable narcissism is less visible and arguably more damaging in close-range relationships. The vulnerable narcissist's grandiosity is not expressed openly but defended. They experience intense shame in response to ordinary social feedback, oscillate between feelings of specialness and feelings of profound unworthiness, and require constant reassurance. That tends to exhaust and eventually expel the people providing it. The manipulative patterns in vulnerable narcissism are less direct, more often passive, more often expressed through emotional withdrawal, guilt induction, and victim framing, but are no less systematic. The clinical picture of psychopathy, the version associated with criminal behavior, absence of remorse, and predatory social relations, describes approximately 1% of the general population. Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist, developed in 1980, was originally designed for use in correctional facilities. But subsequent research revealed a population of individuals who score high on psychopathic traits, without any criminal history, primarily because their environment provided sufficient stimulation, resources, and social constraints to channel the trait productively. This is subclinical psychopathy, sometimes called the corporate psychopath or the successful psychopath, and researchers including Belinda Board and Katerina Fritzen at the University of Surrey found in a 2005 study that senior business managers scored significantly higher on histrionic, narcissistic, and psychopathic traits than a comparison group of forensic patients. Not somewhat higher, significantly higher. The psychopathic traits that are selected for in competitive professional environments are the ones that provide genuine functional advantages, emotional detachment that prevents decision paralysis under pressure, willingness to accept losses and move on without the sunk cost paralysis described in our cognitive biases video, the ability to deliver difficult messages without the social anxiety that inhibits most people, and a low sensitivity to others' distress. That, in certain contexts, reads as decisiveness rather than callousness. The same neural profile that produces remorseless behavior in criminal contexts produces calm confidence in boardroom contexts. The environment is the difference. The trait is the same. Machiavellianism as a psychological trait, distinct from the historical label applied to the Florentine political theorist, was first operationalized by Richard Christie and Florence Guise in their 1970 Mach 4 scale. Their research subjects high in Machiavellianism demonstrated a cluster of characteristics: strategic social orientation, low affective involvement in relationships, cynical beliefs about others' motivations, and willingness to deceive for personal advantage. Crucially, Machiavellianism is the dark triad component most associated with conscious strategic thinking. The psychopath may harm others impulsively. The narcissist may harm others as collateral damage to self-aggrandizement. The Machiavellian plans the harm instrumentally. They are not hot, they are cold. They feel no particular pleasure in others' suffering, but they feel no particular constraint either. Others are pieces to be positioned, alliances to be formed and dissolved as advantage dictates, information to be deployed or withheld strategically. In Robert Greene's framework, which Cipherr does not uncritically endorse, but treats as a cultural document about power, the Machiavellian mindset is both described and implicitly recommended. What Greene's framework lacks, and what the psychological research supplies, is the recognition that high Machiavellian individuals generate significant long-term organizational toxicity, because a person who views all relationships instrumentally creates environments where no one trusts anyone, where information is hoarded rather than shared, and where collaborative advantage is systematically sacrificed to individual positioning. The dark triad traits are not universally advantageous. Research by Jonasson and colleagues demonstrates that they are specifically selected for by environments characterized by competitive, short-term social interactions where reputation cannot be established, by hierarchical structures where accountability flows only downward, and by cultures that reward individual performance metrics while socializing the costs of unethical behavior. In environments with long time horizons, deep reputational accountability, strong collaborative requirements, and distributed feedback mechanisms. Dark triad traits are typically disadvantageous. The person who deceives loses their network. The person who cannot empathize fails to build functional teams. The person who prioritizes individual gain over collaborative gain is outcompeted by cooperative structures. The implication is direct. If you are in an environment that consistently elevates dark triad individuals, the problem is not the individuals. The problem is the selection environment. You cannot address the output without addressing the structure that produces it. 3 personalities. 1 architecture. The dark triad is not a description of exceptional evil. It is a description of traits that exist on a continuum in the general population, that appear at elevated rates in certain positions, and that are the product of environments that either select for them or fail to select against them. The knowledge this gives you is not comfort. It is signal recognition. Once you can see the 3-trait cluster operating in a boss, a colleague, a political leader, a partner, you are no longer responding to the individual. You are responding to the pattern, and patterns, once decoded, can be navigated. That is the only honest use of this framework.